Welcome back to Ty and the Guy. I'm Wes Chatham, and this is my hugger, sometimes lover, Timothy Franck. Say hello, hello, Ty. I don't know why.
Seemed like
I don't know where that came from.
It seemed like you were making a dookie right there.
Ty was taking a nap, and we're having some heavy winds over here. And just so you know, Ty, we have some like tornado storms coming. So if I lose my internet, anyway, he was taking a nap, and I was like, "Hey, man, can we do this a little bit earlier?" So he was graceful enough. This is how generous of that Ty is. This is what a wonderful man he is, that he woke from his slumber to come do this podcast for the listeners that we care so deeply about. And today is an Expanse podcast. Today we're going to do an Expanse episode.
And there's only 2 more of those, so you gotta enjoy them while they last, because there's only 2 more.
Savor the flavor, baby. Yeah, savor the flavor. This episode's called "Why We Fight." Why'd you come up with that title, Ty?
Narain always is the one who titles all the episodes. I mean, certainly when you write an episode, you put a title on it, and there's a few titles that writers in the writer's room have picked that Narain liked and kept, but mostly he doesn't like anyone else's title, so he puts his own titles on there. So I don't know why he came up with that one. To me, it feels a little on the nose, because the whole episode is people having conversations about why they need to win the war. But, sometimes it's okay to be on the nose.
Yeah, I mean, thematically, that's what's kind of running through the episode. And I think in some ways, this episode for me, it's kind of similar to The Last of Us that we were talking about. The difference is this episode has everything to do with the story. Like, I look at this episode as like you're taking out the chess pieces and you're positioning them on the board, and you're setting up for the big battle going in episode 6. So you got to do some adjustments. You got to move some here. There's some work that has to happen within this, and the work is not as fun as all the other stuff. So this episode for me, although I really enjoyed it, I thought it was, acted really well, written really well. But it wasn't as fun, as exciting as all the other episodes in this season.
Yeah, but you can't do an action scene. You can't just make a show that's just action scenes and do it well and do it for a budget. So, that's the thing is, you gotta have some episodes that are more conversational. And actually, I mean, the trick is that there's a lot. So sci-fi isn't just one fandom. Sci-fi is a lot of different fandoms, right? Because sci-fi tends to have action in it. So people who like action will watch sci-fi, and sci-fi tends to have like technology and gadgets in it. So people who are into that will watch sci-fi. And also, sci-fi will draw people who like drama and stuff. So because of that, no matter what you concentrate an episode on, some portion of your fan base is going to think it's the best episode, and some portion of your fan base is going to be like, well, they didn't have enough action scenes, or they didn't have enough, where were the robots, right? So it's impossible to please everybody, so you just kind of got to tell the story you want to tell.
You tell the story the way you have to tell the story, and then you look at it as a whole. Right. And then, like you think about Game of Thrones, there's some episodes that really strike you, that you really love, and there's some episodes you don't love as much. And I think with this one, some drama I really get into, and some of the storylines I was really into. Some of the storylines I'm not in as much. I'm not into.
It's because you're not in those stories, and you're like looking at yourself on screen, right?
Well, no. No, I mean, I think when we do this podcast, we kind of separate ourselves from, and like talk about it as a fan. I think as a fan, there's some things that I'm really interested in. Like I really was interested in the Avasarala Drummer storyline. Yeah. I really like the moment between Drummer and Dominique and Naomi, and especially in light of the bonus episode that I think Narain wrote, that one, where you find out just how like Kara's feelings, like it's more on the surface of Naomi, and you see like what Drummer's going through and things like that. So I was really involved in that and enjoyed this in this episode. And, and also too, like the whole question of why you fight. We've talked about this. I just read Band of Brothers, and then I read Dick Winter's book after that. And it's interesting to me. And there's something about, look, there's a reason why that book is a massive bestseller and this TV show is a massive bestseller. there's something about these group of people that they're so vulnerable that they have to rely on each other in order to survive because of what they're up against. And when you're in the heat of it, you're not thinking of the macro political ramifications of why we're here or what we're doing and everything. It's like, no, you're just thinking about taking your next breath and making sure the guy next to you takes your next breath. And there's a level of relationship that gets developed in that place. And we as human beings long for that relationship. That's why we're so drawn to those stories and drawn to those situations. And this episode really highlights, like, for instance, I think Amos really kind of lost touch of what we're doing or why we're fighting, especially when he found out that Holden disarmed the bomb. He just could not wrap his head around why he would do that and how many lives that it would have saved, particularly like how it would have, you know, his family, his core, his tribe, how much safer it would be if Marco was gone. But Frankie put it back into perspective for him. She's like, at the end of the day, all you're doing is looking at the guy that's on your flank, looking at the guy that's next to you and everything. And so that kind of refocuses his mind. He's like, yeah, that's right. That's right. Holden has this thing, this micro thing. My job is to back him. I'm here to back the people that I care about. And you know, and that's kind of the conversation that Naomi had with Drummer. You know, you gotta take care of the people that you're fighting for, the people that you love.
Yeah. So I think you're 100% right that in the middle of a battle, when you're surrounded by people you care about and the bullets are flying or the missiles are flying or whatever, like, philosophy is for before the war and after the war, right? Like, after the war, you can say philosophically, were we in the right? I think that's an okay judgment for people to make. But in the moment, there's no room for that. There's, like you said, you know, you got a guy next to you or a woman next to you that you care about, that if you don't pay attention, if you don't do your job, they're going to die. People just aren't capable of holding those two things in their head at the same time. And so you just got to buckle down and try to get through it. And then afterward, maybe you can have those philosophical questions.
But the evolution of the Rocinante relationships in the ship resemble that, because in the beginning, when they come together in the ship, they're kind of thrown together. Yeah. There's no really rhyme or reason why they're together. Some of them don't, you know, it's not like they even particularly like each other, but they go through so much and they have to rely on each other in order to survive, and their lives are risk, that it bonds them together to the point where they love each other. Like, they're a family now. And you read that, like reading that Dick Winters book, it's interesting how powerful those relationships are, that even like later at the end of their lives, it's still the most important relationships that they've formed. And it was that time, that few years in Europe, that they formed these relationships, and it was lifelong connection, and they adored each other and they loved each other, and everybody speaks, you know, Dick Winters is one of those leaders that comes along like once in a lifetime. Like, everybody just really adores him and talks about his leadership abilities
and the fact that he survived the whole war. It's amazing.
Yeah. And they were going to send him to Korea.
Yeah, I mean, it just the fact that he survived the whole thing. I mean, like, he was literally, like, when we talk about the worst battles of World War II, the ones that had the highest casualties and the most intense fighting, he was like at all of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Tying that to the Rocinante and how the people on there came together, you know, one of the things that happens over the course of the books, and I think most of these are in the show too, is that at some point everyone saves everyone else's life. And so everyone on that crew has saved everybody else on the crew at least once, and probably multiple times. And so you get this sense of, when somebody saves your life, your trust level in them goes way up. Right? I mean, because like, people are like, hey, do you like that guy? Yeah, I like that guy. I wouldn't put my life in his hands. You'll hear people say that, right? Like, yeah, I mean, he's an okay guy. Would I count on him to save me if I was falling off a cliff, right? No, probably not.
Yeah.
But everybody on the crew has saved everybody else. So you have that level of, if I was dangling off the side of a cliff and only one person could hold the rope, I would trust anyone on this crew to hold the rope. Right?
Yeah. There's that thing that I like about this episode of, they're now going into the darkest period of this war, the biggest battle they have. And they're really figuring out and focusing in on what is our reason. Why are we here? Why are we doing this? And it's for the people they love.
Yes.
And it's for the thing. And we spent, 7 years, 6 seasons forging these relationships and developing these arcs. And Avasarala is really coming, like her, the apex of her walking through, going to Drummer and asking for Drummer's help and saying that she needs this, and like thinking about the people that are dying and their well-being, and there's this beautiful completion of her arc. And that's one of the things that I really liked about this episode.
I think the Drummer and Avasarala's story in episode 5 is maybe one of the best stories that the show has done. Even though episode 5 doesn't have like the pew pew action stuff that some people love, it has, I think, the best story. One of the best stories we've ever done on the show, which is, as you said, it's the completion of Avasarala's arc from, in the first season, first episode, she's fucking torturing Belters for information. And by the 5th episode of season 6, she's asking a leader of the OPA to help her and to fight at her side. And it's a wonderful culmination of Drummer's arc, that she starts out, she's the angry OPA, realizes that there are limits to what she's willing to do for her cause.
And there's not a trace of vulnerability.
Yeah.
In the early Drummer days, there's not a trace of weakness or vulnerability,
not even a bit.
Or any or not even a bit.
Yeah. And that moment where she is willing to reach across the aisle, as you would say, in modern American politics, reach across the aisle and help somebody who has up to this point only been her enemy. Because for a common cause. Like
Avasarala's like Donald Trump to her. Right? Yeah. What do you think? Like, talk a little bit about what is Drummer, what is ultimately leading to Drummer making the decision to then go in and fight with the Inners.
Well, I think Drummer's trapped between two terrible choices. This,
because there's a great in the thing, there's the good, where she talks about either I'm a slave to the Inners or I die.
I think that is the simplistic version of it, that I'm either a slave to the Inners or Marco kills me. But it's more than that. So the thing that we come to realize about Drummer is she's very intense. She, like you said, she doesn't show any vulnerability. She's very tough. But we start to realize that she has this powerful sense of justice and morality, that she has been trying to find a way to fit into her worldview all her life. This has been her struggle, right? Because she wants to be right. She wants to be on the right side. She absolutely believes that the Inners have abused and mistreated the Belters for 200 years, and she will fight to make that better. She will fight to improve the lot of her people, which I think, that's an admirable quality. But at the same time, what we start to realize when Marco starts doing the stuff that he's doing, we start to see that there were limits to what she was willing to do. There's, there are plenty of people who would, like, if, a faction I didn't agree with took over my country, I would fight to stop them. I'd be a rebel, right? There are plenty of people who feel that way. And then if you ask them, okay, would you set off a nuclear bomb in a city full of civilians to prove your point? Most people are going to go, no, I'm not going to kill 1 million civilians to prove my point. I'm not going to do that. That's too far, right?
Yeah.
And I think Drummer has been trapped between those things, because Marco's the guy who'll just set off the nukes everywhere. He doesn't give a fuck, right?
Yeah.
He's like, if I have to burn 1 million civilians to prove my point, well, then that's worth it. And so she's been trapped not just between being a slave and being dead. She's been trapped between, what does it mean to be an insurgent? What does it mean to be a rebel against an unjust, government? How far am I willing to go? What's the limits?
Yeah, what's interesting is each choice that she has before her would violate her internal morality. Yeah. And that's something she's not willing to do. Well, that sense of justice.
Well, and what she finds is something she can tolerate, which is Marco has to go. Marco is the greater evil right now in her mind, right? And she believes the things he's doing are only going to make her people's situation worse, not better, right? If the UN decides to just nuke every Belter station, they can do that. And she knows that. She's like, we're tempting them to just eradicate us, which is their next step. And that doesn't help us either. And Marco's so self-absorbed that if like every Belter dies except for him and he gets to be the king, he's okay with that. Right? I mean, as long as there's 10 Belters left to cheer his name when he walks by, that's all he needs.
Yeah.
And she knows that about him.
Yeah. Have you ever been in a situation where there's somebody that you don't know them personally, but you know them through whether they're famous or through stories from friends or whatever, other people, and you just feel like you completely disagree with them politically, you disagree with their philosophy on life, you disagree with how you just feel like you'd have nothing to do with that person, and then you end up meeting that person. Like, have you ever been in that situation where you meet that person and then you start to like that person or become friends with that person, and then you realize, like, even though you still disagree with them, your disagreement feels different the way you look, because you can understand a little bit about like his side or their side, even though you still disagree with it. But it's not like, because I find myself sometimes being like, why the fuck would they think? I don't understand. And if I don't understand and I don't think that, then I'm like, there's got to be something I'm missing, because that it's another human being, so they gotta be able to justify it from their end. So I need to understand that side before I can like just write something off. Have you ever been in that situation?
Yeah, I have. I tend to find that, and this is going to come across as arrogant sounding, and I don't mean it that way. I mean, I fully admit to being arrogant, but in this case, that's not my intention. Where I won't understand somebody's position, like I don't understand how they got there, and then I'll have a conversation with them, and often what I'll find is they have been greatly misinformed about something, about the way something works. And the reason that I know that that's true is because I grew up greatly misinformed. I was one of those people. And, I grew up in a really strange religious group that told me the world worked a certain way. And a lot of the ideas I had about the world and about other people were based on this misinformation. And so I'll be talking to other people and go, oh, I see what happened to you. What happened to you is the thing that happened to me. You have been misinformed, and you're basing your worldview on this misinformation. And that's how you've come to these very warped conclusions. And I don't blame the person for that. Like, I don't think that makes them a bad person. Like, I don't think I was a bad person when I was misinformed. Like when I was a little kid, I thought all gay people God was going to kill all the gay people because they were evil. And obviously that's evil. And the Bible says so. And then I became an adult and actually became more greatly informed and realized how full of shit I was as a kid when I thought that. But I don't think I was a bad person. When I see somebody who is living a life that I see as being based on misinformation, I don't judge them personally as being evil. But that's often the case that I find. And I think that ties into what's happening here is that Avasarala's entire view of Belters is based on the story Earthers tell themselves about Belters, which is not a true story. It is a warped version of reality. And the way Drummer sees Avasarala is the same. It is based on this warped view. And one of the stories we tell early in the books, that, because this is the thing Daniel and I agree on, that often people's warped views of other people are based on misinformation, that early on in the second book, and we do a little bit of this in the show, but not as much, where Bobby goes to Earth and she gets to actually be on Earth for a while and live among Earthers and realize how misinformed she was as a Martian about what life on Earth is and what Earth people care about, and has this radical reexamination of her own beliefs because of that. And I think what we're seeing here with Drummer and Avasarala is over the course of 4 or 5 seasons, both of them have had to go through that reevaluation. And this moment in episode 5 where Drummer finally finds a way that she can help beat Marco and not give up anything she doesn't want to give up, because neither of these women bends an inch in this conversation. Neither of them gives in at all. They just find this one tiny little crack where they can kind of agree on that little space, and that's what they agree on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there's a bit of respect that Avasarala made the gesture to come to her, to show her. Yeah. And demonstrate that, what's interesting is like, sometimes if I, am with somebody that they might have an idea about the rest of the world that I don't really agree with. In my mind, it's like, oh, they just need to travel.
Yeah.
They just need to go to other places and have that experience. Their ideas that they have about this place and the people that live in that place, they need to go there.
Yeah.
And they see, because the caricature and the cartoon version of reality that they have in their head, truth will always dispel that. Truth will always take that. Well, I guess not always. I mean, there's some people, but I think it's always, I think people go against what they're really perceiving or what they know is the truth for whatever gain that gets them, whether that's for their group, whether that's a political gain, whether they're manipulating things that they know that are true just in order to get ahead in some specific way. And that can even just be a social motivation of just wanting to impress the people around you and to move up in that social group or that circle. But that's when it's at its most gross, when people know that they're being misleading or manipulating and they're, doing the cartoon version of reality to get ahead in some way. And that's so people who are misinformed and have a view of the world I don't agree with based on that misinformation, I don't blame them. The people I blame are the ones who misinformed them. Like Marco.
Yeah, like Marco is, go ahead. Say what you're going to say, because I agree with it.
Because Marco has no moral center. So everything is a manipulation. Yep. Everything revolves around what he wants within that moment, what he wants to accomplish. And everything, every human, every belter, every earther, everybody on his ship, his son, Naomi, are all pawns in his world, pawns in his game to get what he wants.
Yeah. And I think we've all met people like this that honestly behave as though they are the only real person in the world. So the only consequences that ever matter are consequences that happen to them. And the only time that they can be happy is when they have all of the things and nobody else has more than they do. And we all know people like that. It's a common personality, not common, but it is a personality type that shows up.
Like Breck Eisner.
God, the worst. You know what? Okay, so I'm going to say this because it needs to be said. You can say that because, and it's funny because he is so the opposite of that. Like Breck is the hardest working and most.
Joseph, edit all of this nice shit out.
Yeah. Okay. Make sure none of the nice shit gets in. But the thing about Breck is, so if I had grown up with the wealth and privilege that Breck had grown up with, I would be the worst human who ever lived. And somehow Breck grew up surrounded by incredible wealth and incredible privilege and became a decent human being. How is that possible?
You would have been Rachel McAdams on Mean Girls.
Yes.
In Mean Girls.
Yes.
That would have been your role. Well, the great thing about Breck is like he's one of the greatest down-to-earth, sweetest guys, hardworking guys. But we will not allow him. Like we talk to him as if he is Rachel McAdams' Mean Girls. Like if he is that guy that like just totally like full of privilege and like do
and
that.
We're both still alive, which is amazing because if anyone could afford to have us both killed, it's him.
Yeah, exactly.
like if he just wanted some assassins to show up and take some people out, I think he could afford that.
Right.
Yeah. So back to the thing though, both of these women, Drummer and Avasarala, have over the course of these 4 or 5 seasons been confronted with the flaws in the worldview that they held, the misinformation that they were basing their worldview on. They've been confronted with it. And neither of them has given up on their core beliefs. Neither of them has given up on the things that they truly believe are right. Drummer still thinks the Belters need to be treated better, and she's still going to fight for that. She just, in this moment, thinks Marco is the greater evil.
Yeah, I mean, I do think Avasarala has evolved a lot, and I think the way that she sees the Belters has changed.
Well, so the way I see it with Avasarala, the way that Daniel and I talked about it when we were talking about her character when we were writing the books and stuff is Avasarala has always been somebody who's trying to make people's lives better. The thing that has changed is the circle has widened. So when she starts out, she's like, Earth must come first. Earth must get everything. So if you lived on Earth, you were in the bubble of Avasarala's protection, right? What's happened is she's been confronted with this larger solar system, and as she has, the bubble has widened. Pretty soon she's like getting along well with the Martians, and then she's reaching out and she's getting along with the Belters. And in the last 3 books of the series, we see an aging Avasarala whose view is it's not just any political group, it's not just any particular planet or station, it is humanity. We must fight for humanity. And so her bubble went from Earth first to humanity first.
Yeah, but it's also a good point too. Is like, yes, she has evolved, she has changed, but there's still the old Avasarala in there, because in the next episode, when Holden gives away the whole caboose, and she's like, she is very resistant to that, and she's like, I will fucking reverse this. Yes. I will change this. So it's not like she's like going on. She's not Mother Teresa all of a sudden.
No, not at all. Yeah. And that was an important thing. Is my favorite moments of
is when I'm in them.
Well, so my top
is every scene
top
that
favorite moment is anytime you get naked on camera. My second favorite moment is anytime you have two characters come together that seem to have wildly opposing viewpoints, and we find a way for them to work together without either of them giving up their worldview. That's my favorite. I hate when you're watching a show and like you have that moment of confrontation and one person just gives in to the other one. It's just it feels like lazy writing to me. What I like is when they come together and both of them are like, fuck you, I'm not bending an inch. And somehow they find there's this one little edge between them that they kind of overlap a little bit in that one tiny space. And that's the space they can operate in. And that's what we have with Avasarala and Drummer.
All right. We got a great top 5 today, Ty. Joseph told me what it was, and I think it'd be fun. What is it, Joseph?
We are doing top rival team-ups.
Ooh, rival team-ups.
Yep.
I'm going to go ahead and throw out there, and I know this is a movie that's close to your heart, it's close to my heart, and I think it's a really great, it's Midnight Run, Jack and the Duke.
Oh, yeah.
Dude,
Midnight Run.
That's a special movie. Yeah. Like, it's a movie that I don't hear people talk about a lot. I think it's one of De Niro's great performances. I think he's so good in this movie. And it's like the first time that De Niro, it's the first time where it's like, oh, this is something different and fresh. This is a choice that I haven't seen him make.
Yeah, it's like De Niro not playing a gangster.
Yeah, I guess that's the best way to say it.
And in a movie that is clearly a comedy. And he's funny. He's funny in it.
48 Hours got to go up there.
Yeah, 48. Well, as long as we're doing the comedies, for sure, 48 Hours is one of the greatest. We hate each other when we team. I would, if you scroll down a little bit, there was one I saw down here that I really like. One of my favorite scenes in an amazing movie is in Pulp Fiction.
That I'm not in.
That you're not in. When Pulp Fiction, when Butch goes back to save Marcellus from the crazy rapist dude.
That scene was so hot.
Oh, God.
Wait, what?
I know what to get Wes for Christmas.
Joseph, edit that out.
Jesus.
Jesus.
Wes,
you just said you don't judge people who do things that
Wes,
they're different from
when
you.
You imagine yourself in that scene, are you Marcellus or are you the crazy rapist dude? I mean,
wouldn't you like to know?
One of my favorite movies of all time, one of my favorite comedies of all time. I don't know if it belongs at the top of the list in the top 5, but Trading Places was one of my favorite comedies of all time.
It's got to be Trading Places. It's got to be up there. And maybe this concept works better as a comedy because the special movies in this are the comedies for me. I mean, you got Enemy Mine, Tango and Cash, which I kind of think is more in the comedic action.
It is. It's a action comedy for sure. I will say The Killer, one of the great bad guy, good guy team ups ever.
Yeah, Joseph was telling me about that movie before. It's a movie I haven't seen.
If you haven't seen it, then we shouldn't put it at the top of the list.
I want to see it.
Yeah, The Killer is fantastic. There's like a half a dozen movies from that period. I call them the Chow Yun Fat period.
That's exactly what I said to Joseph, like the Chow Yun Fat. Yep. That was like the Woo and the Chow Yun Fat period.
The Killer, Hard Boiled.
Yeah, I'm waiting for Brett to take off because he's going to be the Woo and I'm going to be the Chow Yun Fat or the Kurt Russell and the John Carpenter.
Oh yeah,
but I need my John Carpenter.
I told you, man. All I want is the job being the guy who polishes your dialogue for you. That's all I want. I just want to be that guy.
There's a couple of things you can polish on set.
Your trophies, your awards. that football statue that's made out to midnight.
Just because I love Ferris Bueller's. Did we do a dive
We
on
did.
that?
Yeah. So I wouldn't put that up there, but it is great.
Yeah,
it is great.
And it's not the movie. It's like one moment in the movie where they kind of team
just
up
that
or
one
whatever.
moment. Yeah. I don't know about you, but I really liked the remake of 3:10 to Yuma. Russell Crowe and
I wouldn't put it like I don't think it would go above
I wouldn't
Rocky
put it in the
3.
top 5 either, but I really like that movie. Yeah. And 3:10 to Yuma has when we first started talking casting as the guy that I mentioned as a possible Amos.
Who? Russell Crowe?
No, yeah, Russell Crowe. No, Kevin Durand.
Oh, Kevin Durant. Yeah. You know what's funny? I kept telling Steven, because we were, usually like when we had that conversation about Kevin Durant, I kept telling Steven that you wanted to cast Kevin Durant, and he thought we was talking about the basketball.
Well, one of them is Durant with a T, and one of them is Durand with a D.
Yeah. Dude, I love Rocky and Apollo teaming up in Rocky. Yeah, Rocky 3, and then like that racing on the beach. Him teaching him how to fight. I had the tiger. And I'm in a Carl Weathers mood. What do you think?
I don't disagree about Rocky 3. I mean, the Apollo training, right? And that's actually, that fits in well with the theme that we were talking about, because they start out as enemies, right? In the first movie, they're enemies. In the second movie, they start to respect each other, right? We see like this growing respect between the two of them. And then by the third movie, they're friends.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Because of the shit they went through. They brought each other to the brink of death, and they pushed through, and ain't gonna be no rematch. So I guess our top 5 is 48 Hours, Pulp Fiction, Marcellus and Wes, Trading Places, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Oh, no, we took Ferris Bueller's Day Off, right?
Yeah, we did.
Rocky 3.
Yeah, that's our 5. It is interesting how often comedy shows up, because it is an inherently comedic premise to have two people that hate each other forced to work together.
So if you want to write a movie with that premise of people that hate each other forced to work each other, make sure the genre is comedy, because it works best within that genre.
Yeah. Well, it's inherently comedic.
But not only is this like within this top 5 category, the top 5, these are some of my top 5 movies of all time. Like Midnight Run is in my top 10. I love Midnight Run. 48 Hours in the top 10. Trading Places is up there with comedies.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for hanging out. We appreciate you. We hope you appreciate us. Dad, did you have a good time?
I mean, it was all right.
Joseph.
I would have preferred to continue napping.
Yes.
Like and subscribe and ring that little bell for us, baby. Every time you ring a bell, Marcellus Wallace will come to visit you. You want to see my ball gag?
You know what? One of these days, I'm going to be like hanging out at a friend's house, and I'm going to find out that they own a ball gag. It's going to be an interesting moment.
And that,
like I've seen ball gags in tons of movies and TV shows. I have never seen one in real life. I'm curious if people own those.
And I think we all know who that friend's going to be when you find the ball gag at that friend's house.
It's definitely going to be Steven. Steven is definitely.
It was a trick gift. It was one of those snotty Santa gifts.
My buddy's got that for me as a gag. It's a gag.
It's a gag. It's a gag. It's a gag. Why do you still have it? Why is your saliva all over it? No,
I forgot to throw it away.
Then why are you wearing it? Say goodbye, Ty.
Goodbye, Ty.